Center's new webinar series. My name is Becci Watson, and I will be hosting the webinar today. Welcome. As I said, thank you very much to Boost for providing us the opportunity today to share what we have been doing in the hopes of helping more children and youth out there who may be attending court. A big thank you and welcome to my English-speaking audience. Merci et bienvenue à tous ceux qui parlent français. Je parle un peu de français, mais mon accent est terrible, alors je vais laisser la traduction à les traducteurs. In saying that, I do have some resources that I've had help translating into French to conduct preps for our French-speaking families here. So if anyone is interested in that, please reach out. If there was enough interest, I would definitely look to find more funding to translate all of the materials that we have here. And then I'd also like to acknowledge that here in Edmonton, we are on traditional Treaty 6 territories, and I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the Indigenous people of this land. All right, so let's get started. I'll give you a little more information about myself. So again, I'm Becci Watson. I am Director of Justice Partnerships and Supports here at the Zebra Child Protection Center. I actually began as a volunteer, and I have now been with the center for about 7 years. So I've had a couple of different roles within the center, one being the unique multidisciplinary intake role that happens here, and then 6 years in my current position. So what is the Zebra Center? Back in 2002, we became one of Canada's first child advocacy centers. So we're Edmonton's collaborative response to child abuse. We're also a provincial hub CAC to support our rural policing agencies, as well as the emerging and established child advocacy centers in Northern Alberta as well. So we have 12 staff members, child advocacy staff members, 65 community volunteers, and then we have 4 on-site partners here in our office. So that includes the Edmonton Police Service, the RCMP, we have Alberta Health Services, Child and Youth Mental Health, we have Children's Services as well. We also have 2 incredible off-site partners that while they are off-site, they do come here very frequently and they attend a lot of our meetings. And that is the CAP Center, so the Child and Adolescent Protection Center out of the Stollery Hospital here in Edmonton, and then also Edmonton Prosecution, so our lovely Crown prosecutors. And then finally, we have countless community agencies and supporters as well. So our court prep program, we created it back in 2011, actually. So we participated in a research study that was monitoring child testimony in court across Canada. And then further from that, the findings suggested that there needed to be a little more robust preparation for children. So we developed a curriculum developed with educators and lawyers. The guinea pigs were our own volunteers and advocates. So some of them even brought in, excuse me, their small children who knew nothing about court beforehand and then got to learn all about court and how that worked. So it was tested extensively, and then we rolled it out in 2012. So we've been doing it for almost 6 years here now as well. All right, next slide there. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of how our files get to court. So this is going to sound very familiar for a lot of people's files getting to court. So first, by law here in Alberta, files containing child abuse must be first reported to either Children's Services or the local policing agency. We then have this unique, we have an intake person for the Child Advocacy Center side of things. She receives all the referrals from all the different agencies. So social workers, the police members call her directly, things like that. She has access to the queues for the 2 different policing agencies. And so she collects all those referrals every morning and brings them to the table. There's a representative from each of our partner agencies that sits at the intake table every morning to review the file and for everyone to suggest the best response to that file. So if that file is accepted, a forensic interview happens within 7 days. And that's for 2 reasons. Obviously in court, the sooner that forensic interview is caught, the better. And then perhaps more importantly, as soon as that child has done a pure version statement that is caught on audio and video, they are able to access mental health supports. So gone are the days when children have to wait, or any individual for that matter, has to wait until the court is finished to be able to speak about their case. As long as that pure version statement is taken, they can start to access therapy and things like that. At that forensic interview, that is when our volunteer and our child support services program gets involved. So they're meeting with the non-offending caregiver and family members and giving those emotional supports. Maybe we call that a first contact. That might happen after hours as well. So we have a 24/7 on-call team as well that will come in to do that. And they're at that first contact, we are promising a 1-week follow-up phone call to our families. And at that 1-week follow-up phone call, that is when we establish that personalized care plan. So for the bulk of our families, that looks like monthly care calls. And those monthly care calls have several reasons. So obviously, we're going to be making referrals to any community agencies that are necessary, mental health referrals, some of those government victim programs like financial benefits, victim impact statements. Sometimes we're just giving them information, what to expect next, to kind of calm anxieties and fears and things like that. It's also to keep them engaged in that criminal process. So, so that come time of court, back before we existed in 2002, Crowns had to stay files, withdraw charges, because quite simply there was no complainant by the time that file went to court. People move, they change addresses, things like that, and they can be very difficult to locate. Thankfully, our families will give us a call. They'll let us know, hey, we're moving to BC. Here's my new number. Here's my new address. And then we can start looking at what supports they'll need down the line. And then I guess at the conclusion of an investigation, if charges are laid, we get notified right away by our detectives, thankfully, and a crown is also assigned as soon as possible. Sometimes in the rural areas, crowns aren't assigned quite as quickly, and that's fine because we're still able to provide information about court dates, about what families can expect in court. All right. So the court schedule, I've provided a little example of where the lovely Excel document that holds all of our court information, essentially. So what are we tracking on there? We're tracking logistics, so things like accompaniment, court outcomes, what courtrooms these events are happening in, how many events we have in a day, what waiting rooms people will be able to use, which court advocates have been signed up to attend with the families. This court schedule drives the timing for us to connect with crowns and families. It's also where we pull our stats out of, so number of court dates, outcomes, agency-specific details, the total court workload. So to give a snapshot, last year in 2017, we had 581 dates on the court schedule. And in the end, 172 children were accompanied on 124 cases. And about 65% of that accompaniment was done by our volunteers. So we have a huge community involvement, which we're just so thankful for. Where do we get that info? So victim services agencies here in Alberta have access to the Alberta Justice Database, which is JOIN. It's an incredibly up-to-date system, DOS system, so black screen, you have to like tab, de-enter into things, but it has all the information we need, and then we can provide that timely update to our families. All right, let's get into court prep. So the basics of court prep. So who does court prep here at the center? It is our volunteer child advocates. So it's our evening advocates actually who conduct those lessons. What does court prep consist of? We're going to go into great detail, obviously very shortly, but essentially there are 4 main parts that happen over the course of 2 evenings. So we have lesson 1, lesson 2, crown meeting, and forensic interview review. Where does this happen? So this happens entirely at our center in our child-friendly spaces. So we have developed tools and tricks so that we don't have to attend the courthouse beforehand. We will still familiarize themselves with the courthouse, the courtrooms, but we don't have to actually take them there. And then why are we doing this? So obviously having someone prepared for court, that eases anxiety and fear around the process. Suggestibility research in children also is very relevant to testimony. Court testimony has a tendency for much more leading questions than in forensic interviews. So mock trials allow for that regular reinforcement, that practice, which research shows is the best way to counteract those negative suggestibility effects. So also part of this is that rapport building. So that child knows who's going to court with them, has met the Crown prosecutor who's going to be asking them questions in court, and they have the ground rules for what's happening that day. So that also contributes to those positive effects. All right, objectives. So when a child leaves that court prep, they should have known what to expect during the lesson. So we, again, laid out those ground rules before we even got going. We're going to cover this, 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 this. We do have consent that we signed with the parents beforehand as well. So mom and dad or any caregiver has that those ground rules as well. So, hey, can I get your permission? This is what I'm covering with your child in this lesson. They need to understand case contamination, and we have told that to them in developmentally appropriate language. They're going to be able to describe the people in the layout of the courtroom. So who sits where doing what. They're going to identify appropriate court behavior. So those are the rules of court and all that fun stuff. And they're going to have tools and strategies to help them relax. And so that can be coping skills for in the moment, as well as that self-care before and after. So introducing those concepts to a lot of children. And then understanding the process of testifying. And then finally, we would love it if they left the room expressing confidence at the prospect of testifying. So a lot of our little kiddos who might not quite fully grasp the enormity of the situation at times, they've been known to leave our court preps going, I can't wait to testify. And then you have their poor parents who look like kind of a deer caught in the headlights, but that would be the ideal scenario, really. All right, so working with levels. So we have 4 levels of court prep, and they're loosely based on age, and they are largely based on developmental guidelines. So things like school grade, attention span, cognitive details, reading level. So for example, level 1. So you're looking at preschool to grade 1. These are non-readers to beginner readers. You're probably expecting to switch tasks every 12 to 20 minutes. And the child is just learning to use language to represent objects. So trying to be conscious of that in your descriptions. They may recognize some letters, but they're going to have a difficulty seeing another person's point of view. And then they're not typically able to infer things. So this and this means this. And then you're going to have to give them time to process after while they're thinking. So pause after you ask them a question to allow them the time to think of their response and respond to you. Right, so then you got level 2. So you're looking at ages 7 to 11 roughly. That's kind of grade 2 to 5. You know, their attention span, you're switching tasks every 20 to 30 minutes. They are beginning to grasp logical reasoning. So like Piaget's conservation task, things like that, like the same mass in a different shape is still the same mass, things like that. They can make some inferences, and then they're likely reading chapter books at that stage. You have level 3, which is ages 11 to 14. That's about grade 5 to 8. Their attention span is, 30 to 45 minutes, so almost the length of the first lesson there. They're developing the capabilities to think abstractly, so grasping some of those abstract concepts, and they're probably beginning to read novels at this stage. Level 4, you're looking at ages 14 to 17, grades 12 till 8. The attention span is just under an hour, so you're able to think abstractly often at that point, and you're generally capable of the cognitive tasks required in court, and you've got about a 9th grade reading level or higher. I suppose the most important part about all of this is, chances are a child's coming in. They're about 14. You're going to guess that you're going to start with level 4 there. But remember to be flexible. A lot of our children, part of their trauma or maybe part of the neglect or some of the things that they've suffered, they might not be developmentally at their age group. So being able to be in the lesson and go, you know what, this level 4 is just not working. I'm going to try to dial my language back a little to ensure that I know that they're responding to things and understanding me. So that's kind of a brief look at our levels there. Required supplies. So again, I'd ask you guys to reach out to me at the end of this if you have an interest in our court prep program. We have all the materials. We have a little booklet for each level that you would be using with each child that you interact with, kind of thing. So that would be that court prep package that I speak of there. You've got envelope and markers and crayons. So that's important for many different levels, particularly for the little guys. So that's some of that rapport building. You'd have your clouds activity, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. You guys can start thinking about creating some courtroom bears of your own. So we have courtroom bears that are dressed as the judge. They've got their crown prosecutor robes, defense robes. We have a sheriff bear, and then we have a bear even that has their little zebra court accompaniment vest on and things like that. So it's a visual to help children with the mock prep portion, which we're going to talk about towards the end there. Ensure you have a working laptop if at all possible, depending where you guys are at. If you're a nonprofit, if you're a victim services agency, what you are. I mean, there is people who are willing to donate things like this. So if you need a working laptop so that you can play that forensic interview DVD, see what your community can step in and help you out with in some of those cases. We'll talk a little bit about what that court prep DVD is, and then ensuring the child has the opportunity to review their forensic interview DVD before they go to court. And then as well, those take-home booklets. So I'll talk a little bit about that again. So those are the required supplies before you step into that room. What is the information you need to know before you're in that room? So ensuring you know the child and youth's name, ensuring you know the court date and what courtroom they're in. That may help you be as specific as possible for that child as to what that looks like for them. Having the crown's name and the meeting date of the crown. So you can start to personalize that crown for them. So Stephanie is actually going to come see you, and she's going to be here tomorrow when you come back for your lesson too. So that'll be your opportunity to meet your crown. No court accompaniments name. So maybe they've already met them, and so you're able to say, so Sarah and Jane, the ladies that you just met before you came in here, they're going to be the ones attending court with you, and one of them will sit on stand with you as well. And then make sure for your information, you know who will be bringing them to court. So if it's going to be mom and grandma in the waiting room, you know that, so you can help reference that as well and help familiarize that for the child. Before prep, so days, probably about a week before prep if possible, can you confirm the following with the crown? So do you know if that child will have a support person on stand? So there's the appropriate legislation underneath there as well, guys. So Bill C2, Section 486.1 there. Will child use screen or CCTV? That's going to be very important for how you describe where they're going to be sitting when they're testifying, to know which photographs to show them and things like that. Again, the appropriate legislation there. Does the child have a DVD statement, and will it be entered into court? So it's kind of a two-part of that, because does the child have a DVD statement that they can review before court? And then should we be preparing them, to review that interview on stand as well. We would rather that interview be played on stand. There is legislation to support that, and that is because that child will not have to tell their whole story again. So they will have to answer clarifying questions, but they will not have to repeat the whole story again. And then will the child have to identify the accused? This should be happening very rarely, to be honest, because unfortunately what we know about child sexual abuse in specific, as well as physical abuse, is that most often the offender is known to them. So it is someone within the family, it is someone within their social circle, and it's rare that a child has to identify those humans, but make sure you confirm that with the Crown so that if that is something that has to happen, you have the opportunity to prepare that child, and maybe advocate for that happening at the end of testimony if possible. So the child is able to answer all the questions, and the last thing they have to do is step out from behind that screen or enter the courtroom to identify the accused. And guys, this is kind of where the advocacy portion might come in. You may have to, balancing, of course, your relationship with your Crowns, but advocating for the rights of the child or the vulnerable witnesses in these cases. So a lot of those vulnerable witnesses, those same things still apply. So for people with developmental that are developmentally delayed and stuff like that, they often have the same opportunity for some of those support persons on stand, that kind of thing. All right, next, what we don't know or we should not know about entering the room to do court prep if possible. So if at all possible, do not have any detailed knowledge of the case. So this can be a little bit easier if you have a couple of volunteers helping out, or you have some staff members that can help you out. This is often harder to do, obviously, in some of those rural agencies that are working on much shorter staff and things like that, but that case contamination is very important. So the less you know about the case, the more you can say that you don't know anything about the case, I guess. Do not make any promises. So, for example, even if we know that that child has a screen or a support person, do not promise them that they will not see the accused or have to speak to the accused, because if they show up at the courthouse in the morning and run into that accused person on the way in, we have promised them something that we simply cannot control. So just not making a lot of those promises throughout. Telling them that, you know, that the best guess is this, and preparing them for that. Do not provide therapy during court prep. Obviously, if you are a certified mental health professional and this is something you're doing well, providing therapy, that's a different case. But if you are a victim services, a child advocacy center staff member, whatever your role might be that is outside, make sure you are not crossing the boundaries. If they do need some therapy or some help before, during, or after, make sure you have something available. So whether that's just kids' help phone number, there's now a kids help phone, you can have a texting line. So if that therapy is needed, there are other ways of them accessing that in the moment too. Strive to speak neutrally if possible. So don't speak of the accused as the bad guy, because that just might not be the case for the child. If that's dad, that might not be a bad guy for that child. And so attaching that label won't be very helpful. Or in too enthusiastically, so making the assumption that mom is a safe person in this case. We don't know that, and so obviously we can introduce the concept of safe people, but maybe not specifically let them identify who those people are. And then when possible, please provide privacy and one-on-one prep. So we do all of our prep one-on-one with our children, as we do forensic interviews and stuff like that. And that's the opportunity for the child to be as honest as possible in the moment. So if they have brought a partner, parents and friends and things like that, letting the child know, so your mom is going to be sitting right here and we're just going to be in the room next door doing prep, and that they can have a break to go give mom a hug if they need it. They can take a break halfway through and go sit with their partner if they'd like to, and just being, but allowing them that privacy so the court prep and the fears list can be as honest as possible. And then sometimes crowns who aren't familiar with it, again, familiarizing your crowns with the court prep before you step in and do that. Thankfully, our crowns helped create our court prep program, but I do have to teach the new crowns about it so that they're comfortable about what we're talking about with their witnesses. And then so that they can also trust you as a partner, that you're relating all the relevant information and that you'll let them know if anything comes up that they need to know about. So what kind of witness the child's going to be, any particular anxieties and fears and things like that. Right, let's get started. So lesson 1. Sorry guys. So introduction, start that rapport building process. Use their name, get on their level. So whether that's sitting on the floor or what have you. Lay out the ground rules for them. So research says ground rules have that positive effect on suggestibility as well. So offer snacks, drinks, washroom. Let them know they can take a break at any time. That's already them beginning that testifying strategy. So knowing they can raise their hand and say they need a break. Cover case contamination. Try to use that language if possible. For children, you can ask them for their help in not discussing the case. So I don't know anything about your case today. Today, I'm here to teach you about what court looks like. So I'm going to ask for your help in not discussing the case. If you do need to talk about any specifics at any time, I'll make sure one of my other friends can come chat with you. Is that okay? And then with youth, you can explain your lack of knowledge. So I don't know anything about your case because we don't want there to be any case contamination. So I'm going to ask you not to talk about the case if possible. If you do want to talk to someone, I'll grab one of my other friends. Make sure your language is developmentally appropriate, so tone, conversation, things like that, and be transparent. So let them know whenever you're writing something, if ever they want to review that, they certainly can. Explain to them what the checklist is that you're checking off. That's reinforcing what their forensic interviewer may have said in their original interview as well, and it's confirming that adults here are forthcoming in their that transparency is important. And then truth or lie. So you have to cover it at the beginning. It can be a tough thing, but do you know what a truth and a lie are? If the child says yes, we just continue on with prep. If the child says no, there's a few ways you can do that without defining what a lie is. So you can say, okay, so I'm wearing a green shirt today. And I say to the child, if I told you that my shirt is white, is that a truth or a lie? I would say 80% of the time when I ask that question, the child knows exactly what I'm talking about. We might practice a couple others, and then we just move on. Again, we're not defining the truth or a lie. We are simply seeing if they have an understanding of what that is. Rapport building. So I trust most of you are in the helping field. You probably know how to rapport build with people. But for children and all adults really, this starts the moment you greet them at reception or at the front door or wherever that is. So smile and listen, ask questions about the child and youth, be genuine. So I don't know anything about Fortnite. I'm probably never going to use that information, but if they have expressed interest in that, I'm going to be genuinely curious as to why that interests them and tell me more about that and things like that. Avoid talking too much yourself if possible, so do the opposite of what this webinar is for me, and then ask open-ended questions if at all possible. So tell me more about that. Oh, that sounds great. How did you learn that? Pay attention to their interests. So again, going back to that Fortnite thing, might not be my interest, but might be something that interests them. And then notice nonverbal behavior. So for teens, we have no set activity, but we might do this as we're walking down the hall into the room that we're going to be doing prep in. And for children, we have the envelope activity. So we explain to them that we have this envelope for all the sheets that they're going to take home at the end of the day, and that we're going to give them a time limit. So I'd recommend 2 minutes, or you could spend your whole hour doing this with them, and just explain to them, like, you can decorate this however you want. You could put your name on it. You could put some stickers on it. And then that's the opportunity to ask them questions as you go as well. All right, court questionnaire is the first specific thing we do. So you'll see the questions at the bottom of the page there. And this is about meeting the child where they're at, seeing where their base level of information is, because some of our children have already been to court numerous times. They know what's going on. So seeing what it is that they already know. Maybe they already testified at the prelim, and so now it is the trial. And so they're quite well aware of most of the things that are going on. Is an opportunity to introduce key concepts. So words that we should not make the assumption that they know, like testify, advocate, accompaniment, things like that. And then the roles. So the judge, he's kind of like the boss of the courtroom. The clerk is kind of like his assistant. So they might be there to help get you water or tissue, things like that. The Crown prosecutor is the people's lawyer. So they might be asking you questions, and they're going to help you tell your story today. The defense lawyer is the lawyer for the accused person. So they're also going to get to ask you questions today. And they're helping the accused tell their story. The accused can be the tough one to define, because that's when you want to try to stay away from bad guy and things like that. But you're going to let them know that that is the person who is on trial. So they might have done something wrong, and this is their consequence. All right. And then the court prep DVD. So guys, I really wanted to show you one of our court prep DVDs just to kind of show you the script. It's basically like a little summary of court prep, but due to both time, unfortunately, as well as my complete lack of technological ability, I was not able to embed it or anything like that. But each level comes with its own accompanying DVD. The actors differ, the language differs a little bit to make it more relatable to the child. It's about 10 minutes long, and it gives a complete visual overview of the court. So it starts with them entering, going through security, going up the elevator, going into our child-friendly space. The crown comes and gets them in our child-friendly waiting room and takes them back through the judges' chambers into the courtroom, our child-friendly courtroom. So that is basically a courthouse tour without having to take them to the courthouse. Afterwards, we want to make sure they picked up on key concepts, because 10 minutes is a long time. That's about the max attention span for some of the level 1 guys. So you're going to ask things like, did you notice the screens behind the judge? Do you remember what they're for? So that is where you're going to appear for the courtroom. So while you don't have to see anyone except for who's on the little screen in front of you, the people in the courtroom will see you up on those screens. Have you ever been through security before? So it's kind of like an airport. Have you ever gone anywhere to fly? Things like that. So just preparing them and acknowledging the key concepts. This is also the part where it's important for you to know what courtroom that child will be in, so that you can either point out the differences or give them a better sense of the courtroom that they'll be in. And then answer any questions that they have. So while you think it's a comprehensive overview, they might come up with some really clever questions for you. And I know this seems like we're lucky. We already have these DVDs, right? They're very zebra. But this is something, maybe ask your community to help you out with. Again, if you're a nonprofit or a victim services agencies, maybe there's a college in town that has an audio visual program or something, or even the high school, and that it might be something they'd be willing to do, is kind of a virtual tour of your courthouse if you can get the right permissions. The script is very important in this case. I know our crowns and everybody reviewed our script quite intensely when we put it together. So if you guys need a starting base for a script, we'd be more than happy to share our DVDs with you. All right, so to me, the fears list is the most important activity for the children. So this is our opportunity to find out what the child is anticipating and help them work through some of those strategies, those testifying strategies. So for the youth, it is simply a list that we go through. And for children, I'll talk about that in the next slide. So with everything, we like to give our children and youth a choice, as much choice in this process that provides them very little choice. So in this case, I'd ask them if they want me to read aloud or if they'd like to fill it out themselves. Then I'll ask for permission to review them together. So explain to them that no matter what they're ticking, that we're going to go through everyone, so even the not afraid. And then ask if anything else scares them. So, just because they ticked not afraid on something, we're still going to go through it to reaffirm why they shouldn't be afraid. So some of the examples, guys, is I won't be safe in the courtroom. I will have to look at the accused. The accused will be sent to jail. I won't know what to do or say in court. I will get confused or mixed up. I will be embarrassed at telling what happened to me. I will become emotional and cry. I'll be thirsty and have to go to the bathroom. I will forget things or go blank. I'll have to keep repeating details over and over. No one will believe me. Stranger will be listening and watching me. People I know will hear what happened. I won't understand the questions. The defense lawyer may be angry with me. I won't have anything dressy enough to wear. So we're going to go through all of that. So maybe they ticked because they just saw the DVD. You've explained to them that they get a screen. And so they ticked that they're not afraid that they will have to look at accused. This is our opportunity to reiterate that same information and say, that's great that you're not afraid of that because you will be behind a screen, and we're going to try to get you as early as possible to the courtroom so you can wait in our private waiting room that has its own bathroom, and then you won't have to be worried about going in and out and things like that. One question that quite often comes up as it relates to the fears list is some of our volunteers, they'll go, but isn't this like putting fears into the children's head? To which we say, you know what, these are things that happen in court. So you might in fact run into the accused on the way. So let's introduce the coping strategies now and the testifying strategies now, so that that first that they're hearing of this isn't a minute before they're up on stand and things like that. So introducing the fears now so that we have the opportunity to work through those with them before they get to court. All right, so this is the same fears list, guys. It's all those same fears that I just listed out to you before. But however, we call it the clouds activity here at the center. So each of the fears is on a little cloud there. And we have a sky. So it's 3 tones. There's darkest at the top, lighter in the middle, and white at the bottom. And so that's very afraid at the top, kind of afraid, and not afraid at all at the bottom. You can do this several ways. Our current ones, they're felt with Velcro, like felt sky, Velcro on the back of the clouds there. One of our volunteers is about to make us some new ones, which is actually, she's gonna paint a baking sheet, and then she's gonna put little magnets at the back of the cloud. So if you guys were requesting the materials from me, I would be sending you guys the clouds so that you could cut them out and make it however you would see fit for your kiddos. And so then the instructions. So again, we give them as much choice as possible. We say, would you like to read these, would you like me to read these aloud, or would you like to read them themselves? And then let them put them up on the sky if possible. And then remind them that you're going to review them all together. And then as you work through each cloud with the child, if they feel better, you take that cloud down as you go. At the end of both the fears list and the clouds activities, remember to check in with the child again. How are you doing with everything? And then also ask them if there's anything else that they're afraid of that we haven't explored yet. So making sure, again, we're talking about everything that is relevant to them. All right, virtual tour and courtroom photographs. So these are other ways that we are able to not take a child to the courthouse, but give as many opportunities to familiarize themselves. And it's that reiteration. So not just saying something once, having them watch the DVD. We follow it up after with a 30-second virtual tour, which again is just a quick walk through our entire Edmonton Law Courts and one of our courtrooms. Again, something very, if you're able to get the permissions from your local courthouse, having a high school group take these pictures, or a local photographer who might offer to do this for you guys. So exploring some of those options of involving the community. Then you're able to ask the child, so where does the judge sit? And you're pointing out where they sit. This is a picture of our child-friendly courtrooms, guys. So in the right-hand picture there, in the upper right-hand corner, you can see the big permanent screen. So the door is behind that, so the child sees nothing as they come in to that room. Only the judge and the clerk can see them by the angle of the screen there. Then you can have the child point out the other things. On the picture on the left-hand side, that is actually our longest standing staff member, but she started as a volunteer, so she's been with us since Zebra opened its doors. That's Sarah Doolittle. That is one of our facility dogs, Fletcher, there, and that's actually Sarah's grandson. But that's showing you what it looks like on the other side of the screen there. So we have these love seats so that the dogs can sit right up beside the children if possible. And then we have all the technology up there as well. So we do still use CCTV from time to time, but this essentially a lot of our children don't realize that they're in the courtroom in this either. It is very important that we don't tell the children where the accused sits. And that's because if they have to identify the accused, we can't have told them where that person is sitting. So if they do ask you, it's okay to let them know that. With youth, it's easy. It's a little easier because you can explain to them why you can't tell them. So you may have to identify the accused, so I can't let you know where he's sitting in the courtroom, but I want you to know that you will be safe. And so you don't have to worry about that. You'll be behind that screen. With a child, I mean, twofold. You can try your best to explain that to them as well, particularly if you have to introduce the fact that they might have to identify them. Or you can simply say that you don't know exactly where they're going to be sitting, but that they will be safe and that they will be behind the screen with their support person on stand there. And maybe for a lot of you, they will also be lucky and have a dog as well. Right, courtroom rules. So this is an activity for a child. With the teens, we simply tell them the rules of court. You can't bring your cell phone, you can't wear your hat, you can't listen to music, you can't eat, you can't drink, things like that. But for the child, we have this interactive coloring activity. We actually had a kind of an ugly one before, and one of our staff members actually drew this one herself just a couple of weeks ago. So we're very excited to have this new one. And it just allows the child. So you're going to introduce the rules of court. And then again, if you can give the child as much choice. So would you like me to read aloud or read themselves? Would you like to choose your favorite color to circle the things that shouldn't be happening in this courtroom? And then sometimes I let the child, especially if they can read, tick off the things that they found. So you can't wear a hat. Tick that off as they circle the little guy with the hat there and things like that. And then ask them to explain why they've circled those things. So let's not make any assumptions that they understand. It might just look a little silly. Have them explain to you why. So you can't talk in court, because as they reiterate those things, they're able to absorb that as well. Right, relaxation techniques. So this is introducing strategies to help calm them in the moment. So you can talk about the difference between self-regulation in the moment and self-care before and after. So you can, what's something you really like to do? Oh, you like to go bike riding with your brother. You know what? Maybe you should plan to go bike riding with your brother after you testify in court this day. It might just make you feel a little bit better. But then also preparing them with coping strategies for in the moment while they are on stand, or maybe in the hallway right before they have to take the stand. So those self-regulation in the moment. So first, throw it to the child and see if they have any strategies of their own on how they deal with these things. So let's say you have a big school test coming up. What is something you can do to make yourself feel better? And they might tell you some of their strategies. A lot of kids come up with deep breathing themselves, actually. That's the first thing they say, which is fantastic. Then we introduce the concept of deep breathing, or that they could choose their favorite stuffy from home, or we could send one home with them today that they could bring on stand. We have little rocks that they can rub in their pocket that have the zebra logo on them. But we also have rocks that we go to the dollar store and buy those soft, smooth rocks and just have those. We also go to the dollar store and buy stress balls. And then right now I've been spending my whole time playing with this fidget ring as well. So that's that top right picture, the gold and the silver rings there. They're fantastic. They're something small that they can have in their pocket and play with if they need something to fidget with. And again, very accessible. The Dollarama has all these things. You can buy like 25 rocks for $1. And that's something that can really help that child on stand as they're doing that. And then we like to practice deep breathing, guys. So explaining to them why deep breathing is so helpful. We ask them to plant their feet on the floor, put their hands on their belly, take a deep breath into their belly so their belly puffs out through, so taking a deep breath through their nose, and then breathing out through their mouth until all the air is gone. So there's different ways you can describe this to little ones. So you can breathe in the good and out the bad, or you're going to breathe in one of your favorite colors and breathe out your other favorite color. So things like that, just to make it a little more relevant for them. And I always tell my volunteers, because some of my volunteers feel a little embarrassed doing this with the teens, but I say, if you're not willing to do this, in the room with them, how can we expect them to do this on stand if they're feeling overwhelmed? So just a quick practice, and then showing them that it can be subtle too. So that doesn't have to be the big dramatic hand on the belly thing. And that is the end of the first lesson, guys. So we would check in with the child. We'd do a quick review. So we did the fears list today. You got to pick your stone out today. We talked a little bit about the rules of court and who would be in court. Do you have any other questions for me before we go today? And you say, nope, great. There's also little forms so that if it is a different person doing lesson 2, because here at the center we often have different people doing lesson 1 and lesson 2, there's a little sheet to just let the next person know some important things, like these were their top 3 fears. I think it would be great if you went over those again with them. Or they had a hard time grasping this testifying strategy, maybe review that with them. So just transferring that information on. Right, lesson 2. So the first thing we do is just a quick refresher check-in. This refresher check-in is twofold. You can again see where the child's at, see what they absorbed, but it's also to increase their confidence in how they've been doing. So look at how much you remember. If they can't remember, that's okay. You can offer them hints and options instead of just telling them. So great, yes, the judge is there. The lawyers are there. Do you remember what the lawyers are called? Yes, Crown Prosecutor, excellent. Okay, so the other one, do you like hockey? Okay, so you know how there's offense and defense. Great, so that's actually the defense lawyer. So find, creative ways of helping them absorb that stuff. Personal preference, I like to compare the original questionnaire to that one just to affirm that they have learned so much already, or to see where I might have to expand a little on things. Right, testifying strategies. So this worksheet comes with both a handout that contains the strategies as well as one to be sent home with the child or youth. So first you could just read out the challenges and then ask them to brainstorm their own answers first, because this will really show how much they've learned already. This can also be a very helpful handout for parents who are testifying as well. So for example, that first one there. So the challenge is you get frustrated with people asking you questions. So what can you do? Excellent. You're right. Take a deep breath. Squeeze your rock or your stress ball and answer the question. But you can take your time to do that. You could remind them that the people are not trying to be difficult. They just need to clarify what happened for the judge. So try to be patient when they ask you questions. And then you can always ask for a break if you need one. Some of the other ones are a little trickier. So like you were asked a leading or suggestive question. So listen to the question and tell the truth. You know what really happened. So just because a person suggests something happened or says something does not mean that it is true. If you were asked multiple or more than one question at a time, don't answer. Ask for one question at a time. It is important to answer each question one at a time. Excellent. And again, there is several more testifying strategies on there that you'd be going through. All right, mock trial. So this is kind of the last thing you do. A recent study in Child Abuse and Neglect Journal this year actually said it reiterated the importance of practice as it relates to child suggestibility. So Brendan and Al said, simply informing children that it is acceptable to disagree with the interviewer is unlikely to be sufficient to eradicate suggestibility. Extending these instructions to involve practice and reinforcement is likely to be more effective. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to pick a neutral subject. We're going to review case contamination. So we're not going to talk about your case. We're going to talk about how your day was today. We're going to emphasize that telling the truth, using words, not nodding, speaking clearly, not guessing, and that it's okay to remember and not understand. And then you're going to explain all the different roles you're going to play. So as the clerk, you're going to ask them, if you know they can spell their name, you can ask them to state their name and please spell it for you. And then you're going to ask them to promise to tell the truth. Or if they're a little older and they'd like to do an oath, take them through what the oath actually sounds like as well. And then you're going to explain to them, now I'm going to be the Crown. And then as the Crown, you're going to ask those simple open-ended questions and then clarify the finer points and then redirect. So, for example, how old are you? And so what grade are you in? Do you have a pet at home? Excellent. Okay, can you tell me more about your day today? And then you'll explain to them that now you're going to be the defense. And as the defense, you're going to practice those more difficult questions. So try to fit in all of the testifying strategies. So multiple questions, leading and suggestive questions, double negatives, and big words. So the multiple questions, did you go to school today? Did you go to the grocery store too? And do you have a pet at home at all? So you want them to tell you that ask one question at a time. If they don't do it the first time, keep asking until they do, or review that with them. So leading or suggestive. May I suggest to you that you went to the pool today because it seems like a pretty good day for swimming? Or may I suggest to you that that is a neon pink shirt that you are wearing? Would you agree with me on that? And hopefully they would disagree when appropriate. And if not, practice until they do. A double negative. So you probably never think you're going to do that again, eh? I'm confused by what I just said too. So hopefully they would ask you to clarify that. And then big words. I always get stumped at this one. So honestly, have your catchphrase that you're going to use in every single one. And then you're going to be amazed because sometimes the child will know exactly what that big word means and they'll be able to tell you all about that. But try to make it come out semi-natural in the conversation as well. So I'd really like to catechize you about this particular part of your day. Is that okay? And then hopefully they will tell you to please use a word that they understand, or they might embarrass you and tell you you're like saying the word wrong and stuff like that. And that's the great part about kids as well, is they're very honest with you in the moment. And then finally, guys, you're going to document, so class review. So try to stay objective. Remember always that the courts have the right to review this, but that there may be important information to relay to the Crown. So for example, I might say, Kate did great in court prep today. We practiced a lot of multiple questions and leading questions. It will be helpful for Kate if Crown speaks slowly and asks simple questions. She took a lot of breaks while watching her forensic interview. It's as objective as possible, but while also relaying information, right? So it might suggest that she struggled a little watching her forensic interview because she took so many breaks. So important stuff. All right, take home materials. And so that is, that's just a range of stuff we have. Make sure that's all going home with them. If you guys ask us for our materials, we can replace our zebra logo there with your logo. So whether you're a child advocacy center or you are a victim services agency, we could pop your logo in there instead so that they have that certificate for completion. Also make sure that the family is leaving with the information of when and where to meet their advocates in the morning. The food service is available so that they're not embarrassed when they don't have the money for lunch the next day. They've maybe brought their own lunch, where their advocates will be waiting, and if family members are allowed in the courtroom, or even if the child wants the family members in the courtroom. So if child really doesn't want mom there, mom's not a witness, so she could be in the courtroom, maybe you can broach that conversation for the child. Hey mom, you know, we're really hoping that you could wait outside the courtroom while she testifies, and have that conversation for her. And then after prep, guys, they will be accompanied to court. We have the fortune of having 2 private child-friendly waiting rooms and 2 child-friendly courtrooms. However, I spoke with my rural counterparts and they gave me a lot of creative examples to ensure family privacy and safety. So like they have asked employees if they of the courthouse if they can borrow their office beforehand for the child to sit in, or they show up early and take over an ante room. Or they know that there is an unused boardroom within the courthouse that is never used, and they ask if they can have permission to use it for the day. So just trying to be as creative as possible to make the day easier for the child. And then finally, I just want to thank you guys. Sorry, I'm kind of very conscious of the time and I want to leave time, a few minutes for questions here. For our materials and training on our materials, more information, this really was just a very quick overview, guys. Please be in contact with me and I will facilitate as much as possible. And then it's just a gratuitous picture of Fletcher for you so that you guys can enjoy his face as much as we do.